Hey everybody, I hope and trust that you enjoyed my last video, which in a nutshell sought to defend Black community institutions that seek to celebrate Black cultural heritage such as Black History Month. Well, now that Black History Month itself is officially upon us, I just thought that I would share a perspective that I've had on that particular institution for a long time now, and that I've expressed through other media, especially in print in the past, but that I haven't actually gotten around to sharing in my videos as of yet. So here goes nothing. For a long time now, I've felt that the stories that we tell as part of Black History Month have put too much emphasis on all of the many different forms of oppression that Black people have suffered, not only in the United States, but throughout the African diaspora, and indeed in Africa itself. I've always thought ever since then that, frankly, we need to put more emphasis on episodes from history, as well as the present, in which Black people have fought back against oppression and subjugation, and in many cases actually won. I remember during my freshman year of college, I took two seminars that were related to racial issues. In the fall, I took a seminar called The Ghetto as a Socio-Historical Problem, and in the spring, I took a writing seminar, and the topic of that seminar was the race debate in the modern U.S. In that latter seminar in particular, I remember getting this feeling of angst about midway through the course. All of the stories that we kept reading about seemed to, just keep hitting us with the various strands in the web of white supremacy and oppression of Black people throughout American history. While I thought that was important for us to learn, by the same token, I didn't hear enough about what Black folks did in response to that oppression. All the ways in which we fought back, not only through the courts or through the political process, but through other means such as commerce and activism and voluntary cooperation, mutual aid, things of that nature. Ever since then, I felt Black History Month in particular could really be revitalized and rejuvenated and given a shot in the arm if we were to take an approach to it that focuses on emphasizing Black folks' agency and our ability to fight back effectively against oppression without necessarily relying on white authorities and power to help us or to provide us with sustenance. So along those lines, a couple of years ago, I wrote an article. You can see the link to the article just beneath this video on YouTube, that told the story of the foundation of Harlem. Now, Harlem is probably the most famous Black community in the world, bar none. What a lot of folks don't know, in fact, what I think most folks don't know, and what I myself certainly didn't know until just a couple of years ago, was how Harlem came to be a Black neighborhood. It turns out Harlem was actually populated with large numbers of African Americans through the efforts of a Black man by the name of Philip A. Payton Jr., who actually went out of his way to use his clout as a real estate developer and broker to try to mold Harlem into a Black community as a sort of sanctuary from the oppression and persecution that Blacks suffered a century ago. In early 20th century New York City, there weren't necessarily a lot of enclaves where Blacks could congregate and feel safe. So Philip A. Payton Jr. decided we need to do something about this ourselves. We can't rely on the white community to do it for us. So he raised investment capital from the modest-sized middle class and upper middle class of the African American elite in that era. This is in the first decade of the 20th century. And he used that capital to found the Afro-American Realty Company in 1904. In those days, Harlem was still a developing community. It was actually a relatively upscale, mostly white-populated community. And white-owned real estate companies were actually buying up land and evicting Black tenants from the buildings so that they could keep the neighborhood white. So guess what Philip A. Payton Jr. did? He actually bought adjacent apartment houses, evicted their white tenants, and actually allowed Black tenants, specifically the ones who had been kicked out by a neighboring white-owned real estate company, to live in the buildings that he bought up. And what that did was it opened up the floodgates to an influx of Black residents. A lot of Black folks from other parts of the city began moving to Harlem when they heard the news of what Philip A. Payton Jr. had done. As was so often the case, not only in those days, but even up to this very day, when large numbers of Black folks started moving into a neighborhood, A lot of the white folks who already lived there started moving out. In that way, Philip A. Payton Jr. and his company were able effectively to use the endemic racial prejudice of that era to the advantage of the black community. They were able to say, okay, well, if you want to kick our black residents out of your properties because of the color of their skin, well, two can play at that game. We're not going to cry. We're not going to just get mad. We are going to beat you at your own game. We are going to do what we can, using whatever resources we have at our disposal, to help out our own people. In the end, the company itself folded a few years later due to overzealous business practices and, a recession that hit the country in 1907. And Philip A. Payton Jr. himself died of liver cancer in 1917. But that action, that bold stroke that he took, is the historical reason why Harlem is a black community and the most famous black community in America today. That's just one example of the kind of story that I think needs to be told as part of Black History Month. Stories where Africans and African descendants, whether slaves or slave descendants, didn't simply accept their fate, didn't simply learn to live with the oppression and persecution that they suffered, but found ways, given their usually limited means and resources, to fight back. We need to learn as many lessons as we can from those sacrifices and struggles that our forebears engaged in and see how we can apply them to our current situations, to the challenges that we face in this day and age in the 21st century. The more independent we can be, not self-sufficient necessarily. No man is an island. We have to work together with people of all backgrounds, all of our fellow human beings, members of the human family, in order to survive and thrive. But the more we can do so without having to rely on the charity of others any more than is absolutely necessary, the better off we'll be, knowing that we're able to stand on our own 2 feet, not only collectively, but individually as well. The more we can do that, the closer I believe we will come to reaching the proverbial promised land of which Martin Luther King spoke. That, to me, is the right way to celebrate Black History Month and Black heritage year-round.